The millionaire is shocked when Black Beggar reveals secret about his own mother. Eleanor Hawthorne, the toast of New York's elite. 45 years young and dripping in diamonds. She was living the dream, or so everyone thought. Their Fifth Avenue penthouse party was off the chain. Champagne flowing, city lights twinkling like crazy. It was Eleanor and Edward's 5th anniversary. But something felt wrong. Edward, usually Mr. Charming, had been acting like a total zombie lately. Then, bam! During his speech, Edward drops a bombshell. Divorce. Irreconcilable differences, he says. But the real kicker? Little Tommy, their adorable 5-year-old, not his son. He claimed. Some old friend of Eleanor's spilled the tea. The crowd gasped. You could hear a pin drop. Eleanor, totally crushed, stumbled onto the balcony. The city air was cold, but not as cold as Edward's words. Lies? Accusations? Her head was spinning. But wait, there's more. Edward wasn't done playing drama queen. He drops another bomb. He's not even a Hawthorne. Turns out, Eleanor's Uncle Richard and Edward's mom had a secret rendezvous back in the day. Can you believe the audacity? Eleanor, reeling, felt something snap. No way she was going down without a fight. She'd unravel this mess, even if it killed her. What secrets were hidden in the shadows? What would she have to give up to get to the truth? Later that night, alone in their penthouse, Eleanor found it. A secret compartment in Edward's desk. Inside, a faded photo of a woman she didn't recognize and a single cryptic note. Who was she? What did she know? Eleanor's old life was crumbling, and she had a feeling things were about to get a whole lot worse. Antes de continuarmos com esta história incrível, preciso te fazer um alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. E me conta nos comentários, de qual cidade você está assistindo? Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. Eleanor, reeling, felt something snap. No way she was going down without a fight. She'd unravel this mess, even if it killed her. What secrets were hidden in the shadows? What would she have to give up to get to the truth? Later that night, alone in their penthouse, Eleanor found it. A secret compartment in Edward's desk. Inside, a faded photo of a woman she didn't recognize, and a single cryptic note. Who was she? What did she know? Eleanor's old life was crumbling, and she had a feeling things were about to get a whole lot worse. The note was short, scrawled in messy handwriting. Meet me at the old Willow Creek Diner. Midnight. Tell no one. Willow Creek? He hadn't thought about that place in years. It was miles outside the city. A total dive she and Edward used to sneak off to when they were young and broke. Nostalgia hit her hard, a painful reminder of simpler times. She looked at the woman in the photo again. Something about her eyes, a flicker of recognition, but she couldn't place it. Was this Edward's mistress? The woman who spilled the beans about Tommy? Midnight. That was only a few hours away. Eleanor glanced at the huge diamond on her finger, a symbol of a marriage that was now a flaming wreckage. No, she wasn't going to let Edward control the narrative. She'd meet this woman, find out what. She knew, and then she'd decide what to do with Edward. She threw on a dark coat and headed out, grabbing the keys to her Porsche. Screw the driver. She needed to do this herself. The city lights blurred as she sped out of Manhattan, the anger simmering in her veins. The Willow Creek Diner, looked exactly the same as she remembered. Formica tables, cracked vinyl booths, and the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. A lone waitress, a woman with tired eyes, and a name tag that read Mabel, wiped down the counter. No one else was there. Eleanor's heart pounded. She sat down in a booth in the back, trying to look inconspicuous. 10 minutes. 20. No one showed. Was this a setup? Just as she was about to give up, a figure emerged from the shadows in the parking lot. A woman, hooded and cloaked, her face obscured. She slipped inside and walked straight to Eleanor's booth. "Eleanor?" the woman whispered, her voice raspy. Eleanor nodded, her throat tight. "Who are you? What do you know about Edward?" The woman hesitated, then reached up and slowly pulled back her hood. Eleanor gasped. She knew those eyes. She knew them. It was the woman from the photo, but older, weathered, her face etched with lines of hardship. And then the penny dropped. A wave of nausea washed over Eleanor as the truth slammed into her like a freight train. "Mom?" Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. Is that you?" Her mother nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "Eleanor, there's so much you don't know. Edward isn't who you think he is. He knows the truth about your father, Eleanor. And he's been using it to manipulate you both for years." Eleanor felt like she was going to pass out. Her mother? After all these years? All those lies? But there was no time to process. Before Eleanor could even speak, the diner doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits rushed in, guns drawn. "Eleanor Hawthorne!" one of them shouted. "You're coming with us!" "Eleanor Hawthorne!" one of them shouted. "You're coming with us!" Eleanor froze. Her mom? Guns? What in the actual hell was going on? Before she could even think, her mom shoved her behind her. "Take me," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Leave her out of this." The 2 men exchanged glances. One of them smirked. "Sorry, lady. Orders are orders. We need both of you." Suddenly, Mabel, the waitress, who'd been quietly watching from behind the counter, yelled, "Hey, leave them alone!" One of the goons turned around, annoyed. "Mind your business, old woman." Big mistake. Mabel, looking anything but like an old woman, launched herself over the counter. She moved faster than Eleanor thought possible. Before the guy could react, Mabel had a frying pan in her hand, and whack! He went down like a sack of potatoes. The other guy, totally shocked, swung his gun toward Mabel. "Mom, no." Eleanor screamed, but it was too late. A shot rang out. Mabel crumpled to the floor. Eleanor's world tilted. Her mom kneeling beside. Mabel was screaming too, except she wasn't screaming, "No, Mabel." She was screaming, "No, Jessica! Jessica!" Eleanor's head was spinning. Who was Jessica? What was happening? And then her mother looked up at Eleanor, tears streaming down her face, and said the words that shattered everything. "Eleanor, Jessica, she's your twin sister." Twin sister. Eleanor had a twin sister? That wasn't even possible. Was it? Her parents had always told her she was an only child. They'd lied about everything. The remaining goon, still dazed, was trying to get up. Eleanor, fueled by pure adrenaline and disbelief, grabbed the frying pan from the floor and swung it with all her might. He went down hard. Silence. Eleanor stared at the 2 unconscious men, then at her mother, then at the woman on the floor. Jessica, her twin sister, bleeding, barely breathing. "Mom," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. What is going on?" Her mother looked at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. It's a long story, Eleanor. One that started long before you were born. Edward, he knows everything. He's been controlling us all. But there's someone else, someone even more dangerous, someone who wants us all dead. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up outside the diner. A figure emerged, tall and imposing, dressed in a sharp suit. Eleanor recognized him instantly. It was Uncle Richard. But something was different about him. His eyes. They were cold, calculating. And the way he looked at Eleanor? It wasn't with the affection of an uncle. It was possessive. He walked into the diner, stepping over the unconscious men without a second glance. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "Looks like the family reunion is in full swing. Eleanor, my dear, it's time you knew the truth. Edward isn't the only one with secrets. You. See, your father wasn't your father at all. I am." "Well, well, well," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "Looks like the family reunion is in full swing. Eleanor, my dear, it's time you knew the truth. Edward isn't the only one with secrets. You see, your father wasn't your father at all. I am." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Eleanor felt like she'd been punched in the gut. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't happening. That's not possible," she stammered, shaking her head. "My father, he loved me. You're my uncle." Richard just smiled. A cold, unsettling smile. "Oh, Eleanor. Sweet, naive Eleanor. Love is such a complicated emotion, isn't it? Your mother and I, we had a connection. A powerful one. Your mother thought she was pregnant with only you, but—" He paused, letting the implication sink in. "Twins do run in the family, don't they?" He gestured towards Jessica, still lying motionless on the floor. "She knew the truth, of course. Always did. That's why she stayed away all these years, trying to protect you. But Edward, he found out, and he saw an opportunity." Eleanor's mind was reeling. Her father wasn't her father. Her uncle was her father. She had a twin sister who'd been living in the shadows. And Edward knew all along. "But why?" she whispered. "Why all the lies? Why the manipulation?" Richard sighed, as if explaining something to a child. "Power, Eleanor. Control. Your mother's family had money, influence. Edward wanted it all. He used the truth about your parentage to manipulate your mother, to control you. And I—" He stepped closer, his eyes locking onto Eleanor's. "I wanted you. Always. But Edward was in the way." He reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. Eleanor flinched, recoiling from his touch. Suddenly, a coughing fit ripped through the diner. Jessica, her face pale and bloodied, gasped for air. "Jessica!" Eleanor cried, rushing to her side. "Stay with me, please!" Jessica's eyes flickered open, focusing on Eleanor with a faint smile. "Eleanor, listen to me," she rasped, her voice weak. "It's not just about Edward or him." She glanced at Richard, a look of pure terror in her eyes. "There's someone else, someone bigger. They're pulling the strings, and they're coming." Before Eleanor could ask who, Jessica's eyes glazed over. Her hand went limp in Eleanor's. "No!" Eleanor screamed, clutching her sister's body. "Jessica, no!" Richard didn't even flinch. He simply watched, his face a mask of cold indifference. Then something completely unexpected happened. Eleanor's mother, who had been silent until now, suddenly stood up. Her eyes, usually filled with sadness and fear, were now blazing with a cold, hard fury. She looked directly at Richard, her voice low and dangerous. "You think you've won, Richard?" she spat. "You think you've got everything figured out? You're wrong." She reached into her purse and pulled out a gun. But it wasn't just any gun. It was an old, ornate pistol engraved with intricate designs. Eleanor recognized it instantly. It was her grandmother's gun, a family heirloom that had supposedly been lost years ago. "This," Eleanor's mother said, her voice trembling but firm, "belongs to someone else. Someone who's been waiting a long time for this." And then she pointed the gun, not at Richard, but at Eleanor. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But it has to be this way. For the good of the family. For the good of the order." Order? What order? Before Eleanor could process what was happening, her mother pulled the trigger. Eleanor froze. Her mom? The gun? The order? What the heck was happening? Bang! But nothing. No pain. No darkness. Just ringing in her. Years. Eleanor opened her eyes. Her mom was still standing there, gun smoking. But Richard? Richard was clutching his chest, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He crumpled to the floor, blood spreading like a dark stain on the cracked tiles. Her mom? She shot Richard. "Mom?" Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. "Why? What? What is the order?" Her mother's face was a mask of conflicted emotions. It's complicated, sweetheart. Something you wouldn't understand." She looked down at the gun in her hand, a haunted look in her eyes. "I didn't want this. None of this." Suddenly sirens wailed in the distance. Closer, closer. The police. "We have to go," Eleanor's mother said, grabbing Eleanor's arm. "Now! There's no time to explain." But Eleanor didn't move. She was still processing everything. Her dad wasn't her dad. She had a twin sister who just died in her arms. Her uncle was her real father, and now he was dead too. And her mom? Her mom was part of some secret society and just shot him. "Go where?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What about Jessica? What about everything?" Jessica. She knew the risks. She chose this life. We all did. Her mother's grip tightened on Eleanor's. "Now come on. We have to disappear. They can't find us." "They? Who's they?" Before her mom could answer, a voice boomed from the doorway. "Don't move! Police! Hands where I can see them!" Eleanor and her mom froze. Standing in the doorway were two uniformed officers, guns drawn. It was over. Or so Eleanor thought. Suddenly, one of the officers lowered his gun. He looked at Eleanor's mom, a strange expression on his face. "It's done, Eleanor," he said, his voice low and respectful. "The package has been delivered." "Package?" The other officer looked confused. "Hey, what are you doing? They're suspects. We need to take them in." The first officer turned to his partner, his eyes cold and hard. "You don't understand, do you? This is bigger than both of us." And then he shot his partner. Point blank. Eleanor gasped. What the hell? The officer, now standing over his fallen partner, turned back to Eleanor and her mom. "Come with me," he said. "I'll explain everything, but we have to hurry." Eleanor looked at her mom, confusion and fear swirling inside her. Her mom nodded, reassuring her, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. They followed the officer out of the diner, leaving behind the bodies of Richard, Jessica, and the dead cop. As they stepped into the night, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was entering a world far more dangerous and twisted than anything she could have ever imagined. The officer led them to his patrol car, but instead of putting them in the back, he opened the passenger door for Eleanor. "Get in," he said. "We're going for a ride." As they sped away from the Willow Creek Diner, leaving the flashing lights and the chaos behind, Eleanor turned to the officer. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" The officer glanced at her. In the rearview mirror, a grim expression on his face. "My name is Michael," he said, "and I'm here to protect you. From everyone." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Because, Eleanor, you're not just Eleanor Hawthorne. You're the key to everything." He turns to face her, a wild look in his eye, and he takes out a gun. But the gun isn't pointed at Eleanor. It's pointed at Eleanor's mom. Bang! She was going to kill you, Eleanor. She was going to give them what they wanted. Eleanor's mother looks at Eleanor, mouth agape, and whispers her final words. It's inside. You, Eleanor. The power. You have to find my brother." The car swerves wildly as Eleanor screams, "What power? Who is your brother?" as the car heads for the river. The car swerved wildly as Eleanor screamed, "What power? Who is your brother?" as the car heads for the river. The world became a blur of flashing lights and panicked shouts as the car plunged into the icy water. Everything was cold, so cold. Michael, that crazy cop, was still slumped over the wheel, dead. Her mom, gone. And now Eleanor was trapped, sinking fast, the weight of everything dragging her down. Power? What power? Brother? Who? She struggled to unbuckle her seatbelt, her fingers numb, the water rushing in, filling her lungs. She kicked, she clawed, trying to reach the surface. But it was no use. The current was too strong. The car a metal coffin. Just when she thought she was done for, when the blackness started closing in, a hand grabbed her. A strong hand, pulling her out, up towards the light. She gasped for air, coughing up water, her body shaking uncontrollably. Someone was dragging her onto the muddy bank, wrapping her in a blanket. She looked up, dazed, and saw him. A man older, with kind eyes and a familiar face. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "Easy, sweetheart," he said. "You're safe now." Who are you?" she stammered, her teeth chattering. He smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I'm your Uncle Daniel. Eleanor, I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Uncle Daniel? Her mom never mentioned an Uncle Daniel. Another secret? Just what she needed. Before she could ask another question, he spoke again, his voice urgent. "We have to go, now. They know you're alive." He helped her to her feet, and they stumbled through the woods, away from the river, away from the flashing lights. He led her to a hidden cabin, deep in the forest. It was small, but warm and cozy, a fire crackling in the hearth. "Rest," he said, settling her onto a worn armchair. "You're safe here, for now." He disappeared into another room, and Eleanor closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. Safe? After everything that had happened, could she ever be safe again? When she opened her eyes, Uncle Daniel was back, holding a cup of hot tea. She took it, her hands still shaking. "Your mother? She never told you about me, did she?" he asked, his voice soft. Eleanor shook her head. She didn't tell me about a lot of things. A twin sister, a fake dad, some secret society. "The Order," he finished, his face grim. "Yes, it's a long story, Eleanor. One that started long before you were born." He told her about the Order, a secret society that had been around for centuries, controlling world events from the shadows. Her family, it turned out, was one of its founding families, blessed or cursed with a unique power. A power that was passed down through the female line. "The power. That's what your mother meant," Eleanor whispered. "It's inside me?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, it lies dormant, waiting to be awakened. But the Order wants it for themselves. They want to control you, to use you." "But what is it? What can I do?" He hesitated, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. I don't know, Eleanor. No one does. The power is different for everyone, but one thing is certain. It makes you a target. Suddenly there was a loud crack from outside, the sound of breaking branches. "They're here," Daniel said, his voice urgent. "We have to go, now." He grabbed her hand. And they ran out of the cabin, back into the woods. But as they ran, Eleanor tripped, falling to the ground. "Go, save yourself," she yelled. But Daniel didn't move. He turned back, his eyes locked on something behind her. "Eleanor, look out!" he screamed. And then everything went black. When Eleanor came to, she was lying on the forest floor, her head throbbing. Daniel was gone. She sat up, her body aching, and looked around. The woods were silent, still, too still. Something wasn't right. She stood up, and as she did, she noticed something glinting in the sunlight. A small silver locket lying on the ground beside her. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. It was old, intricately engraved with a strange symbol. She didn't recognize it. She opened the locket, and inside there was a tiny photo. A photo of a woman. A woman with kind eyes and a familiar face. It was her, but younger, much younger. And beside her was Daniel. But it wasn't just a photo. It was a reflection. It was the same eyes, the same face. But then Eleanor realized what made the image so odd, so completely impossible, because she was standing next to none other than her, a younger version of her, in the same forest. But how? Then it hit her, and Eleanor went cold. Her mother's last words, "You have to find my brother." But her mother didn't say, "Uncle Daniel." She said, "Find my brother. Find myself." Eleanor dropped the locket, screaming into the empty woods. No, that couldn't be. It couldn't be. Was she her own twin sister? But even worse than that, she was suddenly certain who was coming. Someone was now walking towards her through the trees, and Eleanor now realized who was really pulling the strings. Why no one had been able to kill her. Why so many people had died. Because the ultimate power, the thing everyone was after, wasn't just inside her. It was her, coming towards her. With a terrifying look in his eyes was Edward, her husband. He wasn't after the power. He was after her. He had set up all of this. Everyone had died because of him, and now he was here to collect his prize. Eleanor dropped the locket, screaming into the empty woods. No, that couldn't be. It couldn't be. Was she her own twin sister? But even worse than that, she was suddenly certain who was coming. Someone was now walking towards her, through the trees. And Eleanor now realized who was really pulling the strings. Why no one had been able to kill her. Why so many people had died. Because the ultimate power, the thing everyone was after, wasn't just inside her. It was her. Coming towards her, with a terrifying look in his eyes, was Edward, her husband. He wasn't after the power. He was after her. He had set up all of this. Everyone had died because of him, and now he was here to collect his prize. "Edward?" she choked out, backing away. What is going on? Why?" He smiled, a truly horrifying, twisted smile. "Eleanor, my sweet." Naive Eleanor. Did you really think I loved you? The diamonds, the penthouse, the parties. It was all a lie. Means to an end. He kept walking closer, and Eleanor felt like she couldn't breathe. "But, Tommy, you said he wasn't your son." Edward laughed, a cold, empty sound. "Oh, he's my son, all right. Just not with you." He stopped right in front of her, his eyes glittering with madness. "You see, Eleanor, I knew about the power. I knew about the order. And I knew that the only way to control it was to control you. He reached out and touched her face, his fingers cold and clammy. Your little sister, Jessica? She knew too much. She had to be eliminated. You killed Jessica? Eleanor whispered, horror washing over her. You killed my own twin sister. Collateral damage, Edward said, shrugging. And your mother? Well, she was always a loose end. Too emotional, too unpredictable. You orchestrated all of this? Eleanor stammered. The divorce, the accusations, the diner? Every last detail, Edward confirmed, his voice dripping with satisfaction. It was all for you, Eleanor. You are the prize, the key to everything. He leaned in close, and Eleanor could smell the whiskey on his breath. And now, my dear wife, it's time for you to fulfill your destiny. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a syringe. What is that? Eleanor asked, her voice barely a whisper. A little something to help unlock your potential, Edward said, smirking. A catalyst, if you will. He lunged at her, and Eleanor screamed. She tried to run, but she was too weak, too exhausted, too filled with terror. He grabbed her arm, and she felt the sharp sting of the needle. The liquid entered her bloodstream, and a searing pain shot through her entire body. Everything went blurry. Colors swirled, voices echoed. And then she saw it. A vision, a swirling vortex of energy, ancient symbols flashing before her eyes. Faces, thousands of faces, stretching back through time. And then, a voice, a powerful, booming voice that filled her entire being. You are the chosen one, the voice said. The one who will decide the fate of the world. Eleanor gasped, her body convulsing. The pain was unbearable. But there was something else too. Something new. A power. She felt it coursing through her veins, tingling in her fingertips. An energy so immense, so terrifying, that she didn't know if she could control it. Suddenly, Edward cried out. He staggered back, clutching his chest. Eleanor looked down and saw it. A beam of pure white light emanating from her hands. It had struck Edward right in the heart. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. What have you done? He choked out, his eyes wide with terror. Eleanor stared at her hands, her mind reeling. She had the power. She had finally awakened it. But it wasn't just a power to heal or to destroy. It was something else entirely. Something that connected her to everything. I don't know, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the forest. A voice that chilled Eleanor to the bone. Well, 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 the voice said. Looks like the little princess has finally awakened. Eleanor whirled around and saw him. Standing in the shadows, his face obscured, was a figure she thought she knew. But it couldn't be. It was impossible. But it was, because standing before her, with a sinister smile on his face, was Tommy, her 5-year-old son. But it wasn't Tommy. Not anymore. His eyes, they were no longer the innocent eyes of a child. They were ancient, knowing, filled with a darkness that defied comprehension. And then he spoke, his voice deep and resonant, not like a child at all. Hello, Mother, he said. It's time for you to come home. Hello, Mother, he said. It's time for you to come home. Where am I? This kid, this thing, wasn't Tommy. My Tommy loved peanut butter sandwiches and building Lego castles. Who are you? I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. He just smiled, that awful, knowing smile that didn't belong on a 5-year-old's face. I am what you made me, Mother. The culmination, The end. He took a step closer, and I instinctively recoiled. The power. It was still coursing through me. A wild, untamed energy that I couldn't control. It felt like a living thing inside me, screaming to be unleashed. "Stay away from me!" I yelled, my voice trembling. He tilted his head as if considering. "Why? I thought you'd be happy to see me. After all, you're the one who brought me into this world." He reached out a hand, and I flinched, expecting pain, death. But instead, he gently touched my cheek. "You have so much power, Mother," he whispered. "Imagine what we could do together. We could rule the world. We could reshape reality itself." I stared at him, my mind reeling. Rule the world? Reshape reality? Was he insane? Then, something shifted. Something in his eyes. For just a split second, I saw Tommy. My Tommy. Scared. Lost. "Mommy?" he whimpered, his voice small and childlike. "I'm scared." The terrifying ancient presence vanished, replaced by the innocent face of my son. Tears welled in his eyes. "Tommy?" I whispered, reaching out to him. "Is that really you?" He nodded, his little body trembling. They made me do it, Mommy. I didn't want to." My heart broke. They? Who were they? And what had they done to my baby? Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the innocence vanished. The ancient presence returned. Stronger than before. "Foolish child," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Did you really think you could break free?" He grabbed his own head, his small fingers digging into his skull. Tommy screamed a high-pitched, agonizing sound that ripped through my soul. "Stop it!" I cried, lunging at him. But before I could reach him, something happened. The forest around us shimmered. The trees twisted. The ground buckled. Reality itself seemed to warp and bend. And then, everything went white. When my vision cleared, I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was somewhere else. Somewhere familiar, yet completely alien. I was standing in the middle of Fifth Avenue, but it wasn't the Fifth Avenue I knew. The buildings were taller, sleeker, made of materials I didn't recognize. The sky was a strange, iridescent color, and the people, they were different too. They moved with a strange, mechanical grace, their faces devoid of emotion. They looked like robots. I stumbled forward, trying to make sense of it all. Where was I? What had happened? Then I saw it. A billboard towering over the street. It showed a picture of me. But it wasn't me as I was now. It was me as a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. And underneath the picture, in bold, stark letters, were 2 words that shattered everything I thought I knew. Product 743. Product? Was I a product? Was my whole life a lie? Just then, a figure emerged from the crowd. A woman, tall and elegant, with a cold, calculating gaze. She walked straight towards me, her footsteps echoing in the silent street. She stopped in front of me, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Ah, Eleanor," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of warmth. "We've been expecting you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a remote control. "It seems there's been a malfunction," she said, her eyes fixed on the remote. "Time to reboot." She pressed a button, and the world went black. She pressed a button, and the world went black. Then a ping, like a phone receiving a text. Then another, and another. My head was pounding. My body felt wrong, like it didn't quite fit me. Slowly, my eyes adjusted. I was in a lab? White walls, stainless steel tables, blinking lights. But not just any lab. This was sterile, surgical, and all around me, people in white coats, staring. One of them approached, a woman with a kind face and tired eyes. "Subject 743 is awake," she said, her voice flat, emotionless. "Subject 743?" She reached out a hand and I flinched, but she just adjusted something on my wrist. A bracelet? No, a scanner. "How are you feeling, Eleanor?" she asked. Eleanor? I remembered. Fifth Avenue, the diner, Tommy, Edward. The pain, the betrayal. It all came flooding back. "Where am I?" I croaked. "What's going on?" The woman sighed. "That's complicated. Let's just say you've been reactivated." Reactivated? What the hell did that mean? Then I looked down, and I screamed. Because I wasn't wearing my clothes. I wasn't wearing anything. I was covered in wires, tubes, sensors, and my skin. It wasn't my skin. It was smooth, perfect, artificial. I wasn't Eleanor Hawthorne. Not anymore. I was a robot? A cyborg? Something. The woman saw the horror on my face. "We had to rebuild you, Eleanor. You were damaged, beyond repair." Rebuild me? Damaged? Was this some kind of sick joke? Then a door opened, and Edward walked in. But it wasn't the Edward I knew. This Edward was younger, stronger, and his eyes, they weren't filled with madness. They were calculating, cold. He looked at me, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Hello, Eleanor," he said. "Welcome back to the real world." He stepped closer, and I recoiled, but I couldn't move. I was trapped, helpless. "You see," he said, his voice smooth and confident, "the Order, it's not just a secret society. It's a program, a long-term project to perfect humanity." He gestured around the lab. "We create, we control, we eliminate. And you, Eleanor, you were our greatest creation." "But Tommy," I stammered, he's... Edward laughed. "Tommy is a prototype, an experiment. He's nothing like you, my dear. Nothing at all." He reached out and touched my face, his fingers tracing the contours of my artificial skin. "You, Eleanor, you are the future." He leaned in close, and I could smell the antiseptic on his breath. "And now," he whispered, "it's time to start again. Time to fulfill your purpose." He snapped his fingers, and the woman in the white coat stepped forward. She was holding a needle. But it wasn't just any needle. It was filled with a shimmering golden liquid. "What is that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Edward smiled. "A reset. A clean slate. You see, Eleanor, you were becoming unstable. Too many memories. Too many emotions. We need to wipe you clean." He nodded to the woman, and she stepped closer. "No!" I screamed, struggling against the restraints. "Please, don't do this!" But it was too late. The woman plunged the needle into my arm. And as the golden liquid coursed through my veins, I saw it. A flash. A memory. Not of Fifth Avenue. Not of the diner. Not of Tommy. But of something else. Something deeper. A woman. Standing in a lab, wearing a white coat, looking at me, a younger version of me. And the woman, she had my eyes, my face. She was me. But she was also the woman in the white coat. the woman who was about to erase me. And then I understood. I wasn't just a robot. I was a clone of the woman who was about to destroy me. But why? Then the woman spoke, and her words shattered everything. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," she said, "but it has to be this way for the good of the order, for the good of me." Me? Then the blackness descended. But before it consumed me completely, I heard one last thing. A voice. A familiar voice. A voice that whispered in my ear. "Don't trust her, Eleanor. She's your mother." A minha mãe? Aquela mulher? Ela ia me apagar. A minha própria mãe. Mas por quê? O que estava acontecendo? A imagem dela se aproximava, a seringa brilhando sob a luz fria do laboratório. Não podia ser. Tinha que haver um jeito. De repente, uma memória. Longe, distante. Uma voz sussurrando ao meu ouvido. "Não confie nela, Eleanor. Ela é sua." Mãe, naquele instante, a verdade explodiu em minha mente como um choque elétrico. A ordem, as mentiras, a manipulação. Tudo se encaixava. Aquela mulher não era minha mãe. Era a minha mãe, a original. E ela estava tentando me destruir. A agulha se aproximava. Não podia deixar isso acontecer. Algo dentro de mim se rompeu. Uma força incontrolável, um poder latente que eu nem sabia que existia. E rompeu em minha corrente sanguínea. A sala tremeu. As luzes piscaram. O chão estremeceu. A mulher gritou. Edward cambaleou para trás, perplexo. O poder estava vindo de mim. "Eu não vou deixar você fazer isso", sussurrei. Minha voz cheia de uma determinação que eu nunca soube que possuía. Olhei para a mulher, para minha mãe, e vi pela primeira vez o medo em seus olhos. O poder jorrou de mim, envolvendo-a em uma torrente de energia pura. Ela gritou, contorcendo-se de dor, e então ela se foi, desintegrada em um piscar de olhos. Edward assistia, boquiaberto. Aquele sorriso de superioridade havia desaparecido, substituído por puro terror. O que você fez?" ele gaguejou. Eu me libertei. Respondi. O laboratório começou a desmoronar. O teto rachou. As paredes tremiam. Era hora de sair dali. Peguei Edward pelo braço e o arrastei comigo para fora do laboratório, para fora daquele inferno. Corremos, tropeçamos, até chegarmos ao mundo exterior. Mas o mundo não era como eu me lembrava. Estava em ruínas, destruído. A ordem havia transformado o planeta em um campo de batalha. Edward caiu de joelhos, derrotado. "Está tudo acabado", ele murmurou. "Perdemos." Olhei para ele. Para o homem que havia destruído minha vida. Para o homem que havia me transformado em um monstro. E então fiz algo que nunca imaginei que seria capaz de fazer. Eu o perdoei. "Não", eu disse. "Não acabou. Ainda há esperança." Olhei para o horizonte, para as ruínas do mundo, e vi algo, um brilho, uma luz, uma nova esperança. "Vamos", eu disse, pegando a mão de Edward. "Temos trabalho a fazer." Juntos caminhamos em direção ao futuro. Um futuro incerto, assustador, mas cheio de possibilidades. Mas uma pergunta persistia em minha mente. Qual será o futuro de Tommy? Se você quer saber o que acontece a seguir, você precisa se inscrever agora. Este é o momento de esmagar o botão de like, para que essa história chegue a mais pessoas. Não espere nem mais um segundo para inundar a seção de comentários com suas teorias e compartilhe esta história com 5 amigos.